Ideally, we would reduce stress in our lives. Now, in order to do this, first we need to understand what stress actually is. If we think about how we usually are inclined to think about and to consider stress and to speak of stress, we realize that we are speaking of it in terms of being caused by outside things, by external experiences. And so we say, I have a paper to do and it's causing me stress. I have this family situation, this job situation, this relationship situation, and it's causing me stress. But are any of these things actually the cause of stress? Is stress really caused by the external experiences? When we really pay attention, we realize that stress is entirely an internal reaction to the external world, to our external experiences. And so it's all in our hands to change it, because it's all our internal reaction. So we can change it. Because there's no stress out there. It's all in here. It's all in here. And so let's examine this further. I want you to, for a moment, hold your breath. For a few moments, but not too long. If you do this, you'll realize that you start to want to breathe. You want to let the carbon dioxide out. You want to let more oxygen in. You want to be breathing. You want to be having things different than they actually are, because you're not breathing, and now you feel the lack of breathing. You feel the lack of incoming oxygen and the lack of the outgoing carbon dioxide, and you want things to be different than they actually are. And then you experience a tension and a desire associated with that. And that tension that comes from the desire for things to be different than they are, which came from holding on to your breath, that tension is the stress. And so you've just created stress. And that's what you're doing all the time. When you hold on to thoughts, when you hold on to feelings, when you hold on to inclinations, when you hold on to experiences that you've had, or that you might have, or that you wish you were having, when you replay things over and over again internally, you're holding on to things. And so instead of experiencing subtle inclinations to keep breathing, to keep getting done what needs to get done in your life, you end up experiencing the desire for things to be different than they actually are in your life. The desire to be breathing because you're not. You feel the lack of things in your life. And so you end up with shame and regret regarding the past, because you don't like the way the past was when you were experiencing it filled with all of the tension that resulted from holding on to things. And you don't like the way the present is, and so you're filled with all this anger and frustration regarding the present, because you don't like your experience of the present when you're holding on to things. And you end up with fear and anxiety regarding the future, because you worry that things won't end up the way you want them to, or that they might not end up the way you want them to, because you're basing your predictions on the future based on the way you're experiencing things now, which is not so good, because you're holding on to things. And notice that when you hold on to your breath, you're not holding on to oxygen. You're holding on to carbon dioxide. Because even though you breathed in that life-giving oxygen, you ended up with the oxygen being infused into your bloodstream and with the carbon dioxide coming out, and now you're holding carbon dioxide in your lungs. And so it's not the same thing that you breathed in, and that's what you want more of. That's what you want, but what you're really holding on to is not that. And that's the same thing with your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences, because what you're trying to do is hold on to the experience that you had in the present moment. You're replacing, just like replacing the oxygen with carbon dioxide in your lungs, you're replacing the experience of the present moment, of being here, of having your attention focused on the present. You're replacing your experience of things that are actually here now with your experience of thoughts and feelings and inclinations regarding those experiences. And so you're no longer here. You're no longer where you actually are, where your body is. Your attention is now elsewhere. And when your attention is elsewhere, then you're not where the light of existence is shining. We can look at a metaphor and we can understand this better. If we sit down on a chair in the sun, and we're experiencing the light and the warmth, and we're enjoying ourselves. This is a great place that we sat down. Now we end up in shadow because the earth is moving. Not because the sun moved, but because we're moving. The earth is rotating, and we now are no longer in the light of the present moment. When we shift our attention internally toward thoughts and feelings and inclinations regarding the present instead of being in the present, we end up with our attention no longer in the present, and so now we're in shadow. We're not in the light of existence that's shining in the present because we're trying to stay where we were. And we think this was a great place when we sat down, and it's no longer a great place when we keep sitting there, when we keep holding on to things. That inertia to keep doing what we're doing has to be overcome. We have to move on. It's when we grow and we change and we constantly move and we let things go and we create new thoughts and new feelings and new inclinations for the next moment. That's when we experience fulfillment, because then we're in the present. Then we end up moving on. As the earth moves, as we flow through time, we move with that flow. And that's when we don't experience stress, because we don't experience the tension that results from the disparity between what is inside and what is outside, because now what's inside is what's outside, because we're experiencing what's outside us now instead of what's going on inside.